He stood on stage like he had 1,000 times before, confident, sharp-tongued, and certain he'd walk away victorious. Dr. Adrian Kesler, the world-renowned atheist professor known for publicly dismantling faith with data and ridicule, faced a packed auditorium at Whitestone University, ready to deliver his latest takedown. But what he didn't know was that in the audience sat someone he wasn't prepared for. Karoline Leavitt. She wasn't a theologian. She wasn't a scientist. She wasn't even scheduled to speak that night. Just a 27-year-old former White House press secretary with a quiet stare, folded arms, and something far more dangerous than credentials: conviction. What happened next stunned the entire room. It wasn't a shouting match. It wasn't personal attacks. It was precision. Karoline stood up, took the stage, and in a matter of minutes turned the intellectual titan of the academic world into a man questioning his own certainty. This wasn't just a debate. It was the moment arrogance met truth and flinched. Watch to the end, because whether you believe in God or not, this story will make you ask the one question no one dares to say out loud: what if I've been wrong? The grand auditorium of Whitestone University shimmered beneath the antique chandeliers. The crowd was restless, buzzing with anticipation. Students, professors, journalists, all packed shoulder to shoulder, phones ready, eyes locked on the stage. A few leaned forward in their seats as if expecting a fight, and they weren't wrong. At precisely 6:00 p.m., the stage lights flared, and a tall, sharp-featured man strode to the podium. His name was Dr. Adrian Kesler, a world-renowned evolutionary theorist, famed for dismantling religion in front of live audiences with the precision of a surgeon and the flair of a showman. Tonight, he wore a steel gray suit and the smirk of a man who'd already decided he'd win. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, tapping the microphone, "let's begin with what matters most: truth." The crowd applauded, some with fists raised. A group of students in the front row whistled. Kesler continued, voice rich with theatrics. "Truth isn't inherited. It's not passed through rituals, ceremonies, or, God forbid, scriptures. It is earned through evidence, through logic, through science." His gaze swept the crowd and paused, just briefly, on a figure in the middle row. A young woman, arms crossed, face unreadable. Karoline Leavitt. He knew who she was. Everyone did. Former White House press secretary, media strategist, conservative icon. She was invited as a guest speaker to a political panel later that evening, but tonight she was just a spectator. Kesler smiled wider, almost wolfish. "I find it fascinating," he said, "that some of the most powerful people in government still believe in fairy tales, sky beings who monitor their behavior and write their destinies." A few chuckles, then full-blown laughter. "Intelligent people," he went on, "tend to outgrow religion the same way we outgrow believing the moon is made of cheese." He gestured behind him. A massive screen blinked to life, revealing a graph, a clear downward curve. As education and IQ increase, religious belief plummets. "Look closely," he said, pointing. "The data speaks louder than the priests." A murmur moved through the audience. Some nodded. Others looked uncomfortable. Kesler wasn't done. "We are here to celebrate reason," he said, "not superstition, to advance ideas, not cling to relics." "And yet," he added, eyes locking on Karoline, "some still wear faith like a badge of honor, mistaking conviction for truth." Silence. Then he leaned forward and dropped the line that would set everything on fire. "Miss Leavitt," he said, his voice dipped in challenge, "would you care to explain why someone so prominent, so educated, still believes in the talking snake and the magical sky father? Or are you here to echo White House slogans?" The audience gasped. Some laughed, others winced. Karoline didn't blink. For a few seconds, she simply sat there, as if weighing the weight of silence. Then slowly, she stood. The chair creaked as it pushed back, echoing across the hushed hall. Her heels tapped lightly on the wooden floor as she made her way down the aisle. She climbed the steps to the stage. No microphone, no notes, just resolve. She turned to face the crowd, then looked directly at Kesler. "Thank you for your invitation, Professor," she said evenly. "I'll take it from here." He folded his arms, smirking. Karoline's tone was calm but precise. "You speak of reason as if it belongs only to atheists. But let me ask you something, Dr. Kesler. If belief in God is a sign of intellectual inferiority, how do you explain Isaac Newton, who wrote more about theology than physics, or Max Planck, the father of quantum theory, who said, both religion and science require a belief in God? Were they fools? Kesler scoffed. They were men of their time, before we had the tools we have now, before science liberated us. Karoline took a step forward. And what about Francis Collins? He mapped the human genome, arguably one of the greatest scientific feats of the 21st century. Also a Christian. Is he outdated too? The audience stirred. You talk about evidence, she continued, yet you start your argument with a conclusion that faith is stupid. That's not reason. That's arrogance masquerading as logic. A burst of applause erupted from the back rows. Karoline didn't flinch. You showed a graph, she said, turning to the screen. IQ versus religious belief. But correlation isn't causation, Professor. Any freshman in statistics could tell you that. You use data not to illuminate, but to intimidate. That's not science. That's manipulation. Kesler's face twitched. She turned back to him. You mocked belief in justice, love, morality, saying they're just brain chemistry. But if that's true, why are you even here? Why fight for truth if truth is just neurons firing? Why care what anyone believes if we're all just meat machines with no soul? The room went quiet, dead quiet. Kesler opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Karoline stepped closer. I'm not here to convert anyone, she said, voice low but charged. I'm here to remind you that doubt isn't a weapon, it's a doorway, and science doesn't own it. Faith lives in that space too. She paused. You fear faith because it threatens your illusion of control, but real science thrives on what we don't know, not on pretending we already do. The silence cracked with applause, slow at first, then rising, roaring. Students stood, phones came out, journalists scribbled. Dr. Adrian Kesler stood frozen behind his podium. The smirk was gone. Karoline stepped down from the stage, never looking back, and the questions she left behind hung in the air like smoke. What if intelligence isn't the absence of belief, but the courage to hold it in the face of mockery? What if reason and faith were never enemies, but two sides of the same search for meaning? What would you have said if you were in Karoline's place? Do you believe science and faith can work together, or are they destined to clash? Let us know in the comments. And right now, the applause still echoed off the high ceilings of Whitestone University's grand auditorium. But it wasn't just noise, it was a shift in energy, something you could feel in your chest. Dr. Adrian Kesler stood motionless at the podium, his fingers gripping the edge like a man trying not to fall. The fire in his eyes had dimmed, not gone, but shaken. His jaw clenched as he attempted to regain his composure. Are you finished, Miss Leavitt? He asked, his voice quieter, laced with a hint of strain. Karoline Leavitt hadn't left the stage. She was still there, calm as ever, her hands loosely folded in front of her. She gave a small nod. For now, she said. Kesler took a breath and stepped back into his lecture tone, though it now carried a tremor. Let's return to the facts, he said, gesturing at the glowing graph behind him. Science explains life. Evolution shows us the progression from cell to species. Quantum physics unlocks the mysteries of the universe. We don't need myths or invisible beings. We need data. Karoline didn't interrupt. But, he added, pointing a finger toward her, without naming her directly, when people start pulling out names like Newton and Planck, as if that somehow proves God, they're grasping at historical crutches. We've moved beyond that. We now know better. He turned back to the audience, warming up again. Religion is a survival mechanism, an evolutionary tool, comfort for the weak, but let's not confuse comfort with truth. Karoline stepped forward again, her voice even but firm. Then tell me, Dr. Kesler, where did it all begin? Kesler stopped. What do you mean? He asked. Life, she said. Consciousness, the human experience. You say evolution explains everything, but it doesn't. It explains development, not origin. So I'll ask again. Where did life begin? Kesler forced a smile. The prevailing hypothesis is that life emerged from a series of random chemical reactions in a primordial soup. Amino acids form chains, then structures, then cells. Random chemical reactions? She echoed. So your entire worldview, all of this, our existence, rests on a cosmic accident? It's not an accident, he replied, his voice sharpening. It's probability, time, natural processes. Karoline nodded slowly. And do you have definitive evidence that life arose that way? Kesler hesitated. Not definitive, he admitted, but we're working on it. She took a step closer. Exactly. You don't know. You have a theory, but no proof. So isn't that, by your own definition, a kind of faith? A ripple of sound moved through the crowd. Murmurs, shifting seats, a few scattered claps. Kesler frowned. It's not the same. Science admits when it doesn't know. Religion claims to know everything. Karoline tilted her head. No, good faith doesn't claim to know everything. It simply refuses to stop asking questions when science runs out of answers. Kesler opened his mouth, but Karoline kept going. You said earlier that things like justice, love, morality are just chemical impulses in the brain, that they're not real. Just illusions created by evolution. She turned to the audience. Let me ask you this. If justice is just biology, why do we fight wars over it? Why do people die for it? Why do we sacrifice ourselves for love when evolution tells us to survive at all costs? She looked back at Kesler. If everything we value most, truth, freedom, sacrifice, is just a trick of the brain, then why does it feel more real than anything else? Kesler's hands trembled slightly at the podium. Because that's how the brain evolved. To survive in groups, social mechanisms. Karoline didn't flinch. And yet those same mechanisms gave birth to civilizations, music, poetry, art, and yes, faith. Maybe it's not just about survival. Maybe it's about something deeper, something we haven't measured yet. Her words hung in the air like a suspended breath. I'm not afraid of science, she said. I respect it. I support it. But when you mock those who believe in more, when you treat them like fools, it says more about your fear than their faith. Kesler's face flushed. He tried to recover, stepping back into lecture mode. You're romanticizing ignorance. No, Karoline replied. I'm calling out your blind spot. The audience was no longer passive. Some leaned forward in awe. Others whispered among themselves, stunned by the reversal of power. Karoline's tone shifted, quieter, more intimate. Dr. Kesler, if you're right and there's nothing beyond what we can see, then none of this matters. Not this debate, not your career, not anyone's life. We're dust and decay pretending to be meaningful. She paused. But if there is something more, even a whisper of it, then everything matters. Every choice, every moment, every human soul. Silence. Even the lights above seemed to dim in response. Dr. Adrian Kesler looked around the auditorium, and for the first time in years, he wasn't in control of the room. The authority in his voice had been replaced by a quiet tremor. He cleared his throat. Perhaps, he said, we should return to the academic schedule. He was retreating. The students noticed. So did the faculty. So did the journalists. Karoline remained standing. She didn't gloat. She didn't grin. She just looked at him, steady, unwavering. Then she turned to the audience. I'll leave you with this, she said. If science gives us the tools to build our world, maybe faith gives us the reason not to destroy it. And then softly she stepped down from the stage. Phones lit up. A journalist whispered, that wasn't a debate. That was a dismantling. Kesler remained still, his papers in hand, his lips slightly parted. But he said nothing. In the back of the hall, Dr. Samuel Rhodes, Kesler's longtime colleague, watched quietly. He had seen his friend dominate hundreds of debates. But tonight, something cracked. Karoline exited the hall as the applause rose again, not thunderous this time, but slow, deliberate, respectful. Outside, the Boston night was cool. Students followed her with questions, thanks, handshakes. She nodded but didn't say much. She didn't need to. Inside, Kesler sat alone at the edge of the stage. The screen behind him still displayed his graph, but no one was looking at it now. They were all talking about her. Do you think Caroline's challenge revealed a weakness in the professor's logic, or did she simply strike an emotional nerve? Let us know in the comments. Your voice matters. And now, the auditorium was empty now. Long after the crowd had left, long after the cameras stopped flashing and the journalists filed their stories, one man remained seated on the stage. Dr. Adrian Kesler. His hands rested on a stack of papers, notes scribbled with confidence earlier that morning, data points, citations, witty quotes meant to humiliate anyone foolish enough to question his worldview. But now, under the dimming house lights, those same notes felt hollow, lifeless. His eyes stared blankly at the projection screen behind him. The graph he once wielded like a sword still glowed faintly, but its authority had withered. He tried to gather his thoughts, but Caroline's words replayed again and again. If consciousness is just a chemical process, if love is biology, if justice is a reflex, then why do we still fight for it? Why do we ache for meaning? Kesler leaned back slowly, his breath shaky. He had debated priests, politicians, even scientists who still held on to religious tradition. But none had cornered him like she did. Not with volume, not with personal attacks, but with clarity, precision, calm. And the worst part? She never claimed to have all the answers. That's what made it harder to dismiss. He wasn't afraid of her faith. He was afraid that after all these years, he hadn't asked the right questions. Outside, the evening chill was rolling over Boston. Whitestone University's old campus sat under a canopy of stars, the kind that Kesler used to tell students were just balls of burning gas. But tonight, for some reason, they looked different. Karoline was walking alone across the stone courtyard when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned. It was him. He was no longer the towering figure who mocked from a podium. He walked slower now, as if gravity had suddenly become more noticeable. "Miss Leavitt," he said, voice low. She waited. "I've had students challenge me before. Priests, pastors. A rabbi once stormed off stage." He let out a weak laugh, more like a release than a joke. "But no one's ever made me stop and actually reconsider." Karoline didn't respond. She simply watched him, steady and silent. "I don't believe in God," he continued, "but tonight, I realized something worse than being wrong." She tilted her head slightly. "What's that?" He met her eyes. Refusing to ask if I could be. A long silence passed between them. Karoline's tone was soft. "You don't have to believe in everything, but you should believe that truth is bigger than any one of us. And it doesn't fear questions." Kesler nodded. "You believe that truth includes God." "I believe truth includes the possibility of Him," she said, "and that possibility is worth protecting, not mocking." He looked down at the sidewalk. "Maybe I've been preaching too, just under a different name. Hannum, you've been defending what you thought was all there was," she said gently. "But if it's not all there is, wouldn't you want to know?" Kesler closed his eyes for a second. "Yes," he said. The wind picked up. Leaves danced along the ground. "I don't expect you to change your beliefs overnight," Karoline said. "That's not why I challenged you." "Then why did you?" he asked. "Because too many people are afraid to speak up," she said. "Afraid they'll be laughed out of the room. Called primitive. Dismissed before they open their mouths. But tonight I wanted them to know. Faith doesn't mean surrendering your mind. It means daring to ask what lies beyond it." Kesler looked up at the sky. "And what if we never find the answer?" Karoline smiled. "Then let's keep asking the question. Together." He extended a hand and she took it. For the first time that day, it wasn't a debate. It was something simpler, something more human, an acknowledgement of uncertainty, and a willingness to walk through it. The next day, clips of the debate swept across the internet. Not as a culture war or a hit piece, but as a conversation people didn't expect to see anymore. One where disagreement didn't lead to destruction, but to deeper reflection. Comment sections flooded. She destroyed him with logic. He didn't have a single answer. This is what real debate looks like. Some attacked her, others praised her, but few ignored her. Because the truth was this: Karoline Leavitt didn't win by being louder. She won by being unshakably composed in the face of ridicule. She reminded people that intellect and faith aren't opposites, that reason without humility is just arrogance in a lab coat, and that courage isn't just standing up. It's doing so when you're the only one. A week later, an anonymous post appeared on a faculty board. I spent my career believing science was the only lens through which to see the world, but I never realized I was using it as a wall, not a window. Thank you for reminding me to look again. It was unsigned, but everyone knew who wrote it. What did this story make you feel? If it stirred something inside you, type 3 in the comments. If you're still thinking, type 2. And if it missed the mark for you, be honest, type 1. Also, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments. We want to know how far this story has reached. And if you believe that stories like this matter, share the video, because sometimes the quietest truths make the loudest echoes.